So my parents, they have had 4 kids. There's Cammy, who's the oldest, and then Dan, and then me, and then Brandon. And the age gap between me and Dan is about 9 years, so my parents waited a really, really long time for me. And I just wasn't coming, And then finally, 9 years after they had Dan, I came. I weighed 8 pounds, 1 ounce. I was born at 8:01 a.m., and I was born on September 18th, 1996. So my mom, when I was 4 years old, she broke her foot while she was in her walk-in closet. And the way it happened was that a shelf fell on her foot, totally destroyed it. It just ripped her foot apart. And I was there, but I don't remember it. I was in the family room, which is on a very opposite side of the house, and so I didn't really understand what happened. And so neighbors came, a stranger dressed me. I thought that was really weird and awkward. And then I went to preschool and my mom went to the hospital. And my mom's foot is now all right. She can walk on it and everything. But the only thing I can really remember about the experience was that there was blood on the carpet for a little while after that, and I didn't know why. So when I was about 10 years old, my parents enrolled me in the Spectrum program. And what that was is, it's basically school for gifted children, basically where the smart kids go. It's still a public school, but everyone there has to pass a test in order to make it in. And so everyone is supposed to be really smart. And so I went in, I took the test, I passed it, I did actually very well on it, and we decided that I should join Spectrum for the 5th grade. And at first it was a little harder. I didn't like how hard it was, but I did very well that year, and I think that it was a very good experience for me. However, the kids in my class, they weren't very nice to me sometimes, and they were, I don't know, just sort of meaner than normal kids, and I didn't understand how that happened. I mean, these are supposed to be the smarter kids, right? But they were mean, and there was a bully who bullied me, and that was a whole big issue. But I overcame that, and we're friends now, actually. And so Spectrum in 5th grade was all good, loads of fun. As 6th grade came around, we decided we'd do it for 6th grade as well. Probably not 7th, because the junior high school for Spectrum was like way out there, 30 minutes away, so we were good with what we had, just the 2 years. However, the 6th grade teacher was very, very difficult. She was hard to please, and in spite of my best efforts, couldn't do it. Just my mom realized I had too much on my hands. I didn't have time for fun things. I was just in 6th grade, and I was already like a workhorse or something, and it just didn't work out. And so I went back to normal school, and the kids were a lot nicer there, actually. Like I said, the kids in Spectrum weren't very nice, but I think that Spectrum was a really good experience, even though it was hard, because it taught me a lot about work and how to think and how to compete with people who are also working on the high end. When I was 12, we had a mutual activity. We were going to go sledding. You know, lots of fun. 12-year-olds love to sled. So we were going sledding. It was at night, because mutual starts at 7 p.m. and it's winter, obviously. And so very dark, we go out to Happy Hollow. Happy Hollow is in Farmington, and it's owned by this couple. They're really nice, and they just let people onto their hills. And they've got these huge hills. They must be like 200 feet. Very large hills. Maybe 200 feet is an exaggeration, but that's what it felt like. Anyway, so we all went, and I brought my sled, and we were all sledding down, and people were making jumps across this little river that ran through it. Like there's a little ravine and then the river running through. And so people were making jumps over that, and I wasn't really interested in that. I just wanted to sled. But my sled was slow. Like, I couldn't get it to go more than 3 miles an hour, probably. I could walk faster. And so I wasn't too impressed with my sled at that moment. Anyway, so nearing the end of the activity, I ask one of my friends if I can use his sled. And he says, sure. He has a nicer sled than me. One of those foam ones. I had a plastic one from the 80s. And so I was outdated. And so I got on his foam sled and I went belly down, so head first, belly down, and just flew. I could not believe how fast this sled went. And so I just tucked my head in and waited because I was sort of freaking out. And so I come down towards the ravine and I missed the jump. They made a jump right next to where I went. And I hit the ravine, head first. I blacked out for a few seconds. Then I woke up, and I just remember like my face really hurting because I had just smacked it against a really hard wall of ice. So I called for help, and people came, and they realized I was missing teeth, these 2 front teeth right here. And so I was in shock. I was like crying. I was not happy. It was just a bad ordeal. And so we couldn't find the teeth because snow is white and teeth are white, so not gonna find teeth very easily. And so they took me home, took me to my mom, told my mom what happened, and she was like, we're gonna find that tooth. And so I was skeptical. I was like, how are we going to find a tooth in the snow at night? It just seemed impossible to me, but we prayed and we went back to the Happy Hollow, which is not a happy place for me, by the way, and began searching for the tooth. And fortunately, one of my friend's dads had been like, we need to go back and help them. And so he and his dad showed us where I'd impacted, because I was in no mental condition to be telling people things. I was in shock still, and so I was just a little bit disoriented. Let's go with that. And so we found where I'd hit. We began looking for the tooth with our super good flashlights, searching, not finding anything. After about 10 minutes, my mom sees like this little yellow sliver in the snow. And she thinks to herself, that can't possibly be it. That can't be it. But something just she felt something say, no, look there. And so she looked, and she touched it, and it was my tooth. She'd found my teeth. And so we went to the dentist who was in our stake, and he just shoved it back in. That is what you do when you lose a tooth and you still have it, is they'll shove it back in. That was fun. And then he took me to his office where he applied some like weird braces. Like they looked like braces sort of, but they like were made with ceramic. They were stuck on with ceramics instead of glue around the wire, and so they were just sort of like poking out of my mouth, and it was really weird feeling on my teeth. And so eventually, after a couple dentist visits, they decided I needed root canals on my teeth because they died, and when your teeth die, you need to get a root canal to prevent them from decaying. And so and the first time I tried to get my root canal, I got freaked out. So we went into the dentist's office, and sat in his little dentist chair or whatever, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to poke you with this needle. It will hurt as much as a bee sting about." And what he didn't know was that I hate bees. I hate bees with passion. And so that was possibly the worst thing he could have possibly said. So I was having none of it. And so we had to go back another day, and they had to give me like calming drugs and laughing gas and all that the second time, and restrain me while he poked me. And I got my root canals. I was fine for a couple of years, and then my teeth they got wonky again, and so we decided that we needed to do a more permanent solution, and we didn't want to do a crown or an implant because they take a long time, and you have to go toothless for a long time, and so we weren't really excited about the possibilities with that. So instead, we found out from cosmetic dentists that we could drill around the tooth and then put porcelain on it. And so I still have those teeth today. They're made of porcelain. So if you want to look, there they are. They're beautiful, aren't they? And they fixed my teeth. They should last for another 20 or 30 years. And you know, the part where my mom prayed and found my teeth, that was such a spiritual experience looking back. It wasn't then. I was in shock then. I was not happy. But looking back, it's such an amazing experience that we were able to find something white in wet snow, that people came to help us. It was just so unlikely, but it happened and it worked. And I really believe that Heavenly Father was helping me with that. So when I was in 6th grade, there was this big, huge thing about everyone has a water bottle. You know, it was cool to have a water bottle. And it was supposed to be good for your mind or something. And so I was like, I want a water bottle. And so on the first day of 7th grade, I brought a water bottle. And I was so excited. And back in those days, junior high started with homeroom. And so in homeroom, I decided that I was bored. I just sort of like drank the whole thing. And that's probably not the wisest decision I've ever made, but I drank the whole water bottle regardless. And so first period started. It was a science class with Mr. Erickson, and he gave us these little coupons, these cute little coupons, and they said you can either use these at the end of the term to get some extra credit, or you could use them to do something like go to the bathroom or turn in an assignment late. And I was really determined to keep those. I really wanted to keep those things till the end of the term so I could get the extra credit. Extra credit is always good. And so I decided that I would make it. I would keep every single one. That was my goal. However, that day I had drank a whole bottle of water. And so I started feeling a little queasy and started moving around a little bit, and it just sort of didn't feel very comfortable. And for the whole class I was this way. I was just sort of moving, trying to keep myself comfortable, trying not to freak out because I really needed to go to the bathroom, but I wasn't going to use that little piece of possible extra credit. And so eventually the class ended, thank goodness, and I got out, and fortunately, the first hall I walked down, there was a bathroom, and so I went and relieved myself. So in junior high, I was in a lot of musicals. So in 8th grade, the musical was Footloose. Footloose takes place in the 80s. It's so fun, lots of dancing. And so I was a cowboy, because it takes place in Texas, and so cowboys, we all wore cowboy hats and cowboy shirts and cowboy pants, cowboy costume. And we just finished our cowboy dance. We'd all thrown our hats up in the air, and they had just landed like everywhere, and so we had to go and pick them up. And this kid named Lucas says, "Hey, Nate, like he's whispering this to me because this is in front of a real live audience. And he says, "Hey, Nate, can you grab my hat for me?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure. I'll grab your hat for you." And so he's like, "Okay, thanks." And he goes over to wherever he's going, and I pick up his hat and my hat. And I look around because I want to give him his hat back, you know? And I didn't see him leave the stage, and so I just sort of look around, and there he is. He's still on stage. He's standing next to the lead because he has some lines or something. And so I decide, hey, I need to get this hat to him. And so I just throw it. I'm just going to throw it. And so I just threw his hat. And I was across the stage. So the hat went across the entire stage, and it hit the lead. I felt so embarrassed. In front of a live audience, I had hit the lead with a hat. And it was terrible. I was so embarrassed. But looking out back on it, it's really funny. So we also did a play called Aida. And Aida takes place in Egypt. It has a prince and a princess who fall in love with each other even though they're not supposed to, blah, 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 Romeo and Juliet, everyone dies. And so I got to wear this really cool soldier's outfit. It was red, it looked Roman, and I just felt powerful in it. The problem was, though, it didn't cover our armpits. And so, you know, they could see our armpit hair because we had to raise our arms a lot to look, you know, masculine and guardish. And because it's a musical and everyone has to go like this at some point. And so the teacher decided, hey, all of you guard guys, you need to shave your armpits. So I was like, that sucks. Like, I don't want to do that, but okay. And so we goes on, and I haven't done it yet. And we're doing dress rehearsals now, and she's like, Nate, you haven't shaved your armpits. I'm like, I'm sorry, I haven't done it yet. I guess, you know, lame excuse, lame excuse. And she's like, you know, if you don't shave your armpits, we're going to wax you. And for you, those of you who don't know what waxing is, it's basically taking very strong tape, putting it on where the hair is, and then just ripping it off with all the hair. And it's very, very painful. And I didn't want to do that. I had no interest in being waxed whatsoever. But the next dress rehearsal, I still hadn't done my armpits. And so I decided to I had to find a way to cut my armpit hair because I realized right when I got there, I haven't cut my armpit hair. And so I was looking around and I found some scissors. Okay, good, I got some scissors. Go into the bathroom, I cut my armpit hair with the scissors, and fortunately I didn't get waxed, but it was still a pretty funny experience trying not to get waxed, because my teacher threatened me with waxing. In high school, I decided I needed a job. You know, it's a good thing to do in high school, and so I decided to get a job at a local Subway restaurant. For those of you who don't know, it's a sandwich restaurant. You make foot-long sandwiches. They're pretty good. I enjoy Subway. Anyway, so I went, applied, I got in. I was so excited. And it was an interesting experience. It takes a lot of customer service work to be able to talk to so many people and make a sandwich for them, because there were so many different ways we could make a sandwich. I think like Subway calculated it, and they were like, there's 1 million different kinds of sandwiches you can make here, because different combinations of lettuce and tomatoes, or no lettuce and provolone cheese, maybe Swiss cheese. And so it takes a lot of communication between you and the customer. And it was just sometimes a little bit frustrating because they wouldn't understand what was going on, or they would say something that didn't make sense, and you just have to sort of keep asking them. And that was hard, but it was a good experience. And I think that Subway was a really good experience for that, and also for the people I met. People there are hilarious. If you ever if you ever get to work at a restaurant, you should do it because it's just a lot of fun, in high school at least. I mean, if right now I wouldn't work in a restaurant again. But working at Subway really taught me a lot. It was fun. It was hard work, but it was fun. And I just really enjoyed the experience overall. In high school, my parents had a teenage car. And it had been Cammy's, it had been Danny's, and now it was mine. The problem was that it was a 92, and I was going to high school in 2012, so it was a 20-year-old car. So pretty old. It functioned great. I loved it for its functionality, but it was old. It was older than me. It was literally older than me. And so it was also originally mahogany colored, so sort of like purplish red, more leaning towards red. But as time had gone on, the red had washed out and it was just purple. And so I had a purple car. I don't think many people can say that. I think I'm the only one I know who has ever driven a purple car. And, you know, I liked it. I loved the Camry. The Camry was the best because it got everywhere fast. It was a smooth ride, even though it was broken in some respects. You know, one of the doors wouldn't open. Sometimes one of the doors wouldn't lock. And, you know, we had to replace the battery and blah, 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 blah. But it was a good car. And I'm really glad that I had that car for high school because it was good for having friends. I could have passengers, easy to keep clean. And it was just an overall nice car, and I loved it. So I had a good group of friends in high school. I really liked them. So we were a bit of a strange group. We didn't really fit together in any respect. I don't even know how we all got to know each other or why we were all friends, but we were. And so there was me. I was the smart one, the one who knew everything, the one you could go to for just about any information. I was in all the AP classes, and yeah. And then there was Spencer, and he was smart like me. He was about as smart as I was, but he wasn't the go-to person for knowledge. He was the sports guy. This guy loved BYU football. He still does. He loves BYU football. He can't stop talking about it. It's just crazy. Yeah, he was a really great guy. And then there was Dan, and Dan was a theater kid, straight up theater kid. You know, he had hair down to here, and we used to make fun of him for that all the time. Anyway, so he was a theater kid. He just was out there. He was extroverted, unlike me and Spencer, and he was a go-getter. I really liked Daniel. And then there was Jake, and Jake was just your average Joe. He was a little bit quiet, but he was actually like really profound when he spoke, which explains why he was quiet. If you're quiet, then people will listen to what you say. And so we were a funny group. And sometimes, you know, we'd have some other friends come in and out. But us four always sat together at lunch in this little corner of the school that nobody ever came to. It was a strange little place, but we sat there every lunchtime, and we just talked and talked and talked to our heart's content. And I really enjoyed spending time with them. You know, we went to prom together, we went to homecoming together, all the dances we could go to, we went to together with our dates. Obviously, we didn't go with each other. That would be weird. But, you know, we were just a fun group, and I'm really glad I was part of it. I went to the MTC in Preston, England, because I went to my mission in London. And everyone who goes to London usually goes to Preston, especially if they're American. So I went to the Preston MTC. It's a tiny little MTC, probably about only 40 people there, 40 missionaries. It was great. I loved it that way. It was intimate, it was close. We knew everyone in the MTC, which was awesome, and they were all so cool and fun, even though they weren't even missionaries yet. They were just like training to be missionaries. And so we really enjoyed our time at the MTC. My my companion there was called Elder Skinner. He was from Idaho, great kid, super tall, great leader in the mission after the MTC. He was the bomb. We used to sing together because he could sing and I could sing. And so we both would just like sing little duets and people would compliment us and how well we sang, and that was fun. We had a cool district. All of us in our MTC district were going to London, and so it wasn't hard to get along with any of them. And got to see them throughout the mission, see them grow and learn and get better, and it was so fun. There was a person in my district, his name was Elder Salisbury, and he was actually from the same city as me, from Kaysville. We actually knew each other because we both worked at Subway, and so we were like, oh, Elder Salisbury, Elder Burton. You know, we were friends, and so that was a lot of fun to see him come to this. We went to the same mission, we went to the MTC at the same time, went to the same district. It was great. I really enjoyed that. We used to go and play football, which means soccer, out in the fields by the Preston Temple. If you haven't been to the Preston Temple, it probably has the best grounds of any temple I've ever seen. It's just amazing. But there's just this grounds right below it for the missionaries where we get to play soccer. And so we played soccer and I just loved it. I don't know why. I've never liked soccer that much. Like, I did like it, but not as much as I did in the MTC. And that love has stuck with me. I still really like to play soccer. And the food, oh, the food at the MTC, it was so good. So what the food we had there, it was cooked by this guy. We called him by his first name, but I can't remember it. It's probably like Joe or something. And so Joe cooked the best food. And so every day it was something amazing, like a traditional English dinner with Yorkshire puddings, which for those of you who don't know, they're like little circles with a hole in them. Well, not a hole, like that they've been pushed down. Like if you put dough around a cupcake slot, that's what it'd look like. And with like roast beef and chicken. Oh, and he would make Greek dessert because there was also Greek missionaries in our MTC. And the Greek desserts were, they were divine. And I just really enjoyed my MTC experience. I feel like it was productive. I don't think anything can really prepare you enough for a mission, but the MTC did give it a good shot. My first area I was assigned to was called Kettering. Kettering is sort of close to central England, and so it's really a very small city, very compact. Like there's a good amount of people who live there, and there's just sprawls and sprawls and sprawls of farmland and pastures and just nature. And it was beautiful there. I loved the scenery in Kettering. And my trainer was called Elder Crawley, and he was a cool guy. He played soccer a lot, and so I enjoyed that. And we had our first baptism during my second transfer. His name was Gary. Gary was a great guy. He was just on top of it all, always reading the scriptures. Like he had scriptures that were like the little mini scriptures and the big scriptures, and he had them on his phone, and he would read them on the train to work. And he was golden, basically. He was a very good convert. He was very committed to the gospel. He knew it was true, and he was very easy to teach. So after my first transfer with Elder Crawley, we got another companion. So we became a trio, me, Elder Crawley, and Elder Gonsalvish. Elder Gonsalvish. Gonsalvish. It's really hard to pronounce because it has this weird C with a little C under it. And I didn't understand what pronunciation there is for that. And neither did any of the English people. So a lot of them would just call him Elder Gonzalez, even though he was Elder Gonsalvish. And so Elder Gonsalvish, he was funny. He had a lot of medical problems that made it difficult for him, but he was just hilarious. He just loved to joke around, and he was just a lot of fun, a bundle of joy. After those two transfers, I got to stay in Kettering. My companions moved out, and I got a new companion. His name was Elder Toa. Elder Toa is from Vanuatu, which, if you don't know where that is, that's pretty close to New Zealand. It's a lot poorer there, but he came from like a little tiny island from Vanuatu, like something like 2 miles across. And so he came from a very small island. Now he was in England. He'd been out 9 months, so he was my senior companion. And he was a lot of fun himself. Like, even though he couldn't speak very well because he wasn't very accustomed to English, it wasn't close to what he'd spoken before, and so it was just very difficult for him to talk. But he was just funny. He just loved to make little jokes, little asides that just made things better no matter what was going on. And so I really enjoyed being with Elder Toa. So Southend-on-Sea was my next area, and Southend was a pretty nice place. I went there during the winter, so it was cold, but usually it's a beach resort. It's on the southern-ish coast of Britain. Like, they have two southern coasts, like one that comes out and then a big fat one. Mine was the first one. And so they had a beach, they had a really big town center. So a town center is like a mall, but it's like public, and so we can go talk to people there. Anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed it there. I found it was a little dark. Like, it's dark everywhere in England during the winter. Like, that's just an understatement. It's just, everything's grayish and bleh. I had a companion named Elder Hiltonen. He was from Finland, and he was military. People in Finland, they have to join the military. They're forced to out of high school. And so he'd been in the military, and he'd become a driver for the tanks or for transportation vehicles. I can't remember. But he was very straight and strict, and I sort of liked that about him, but sometimes it was difficult to communicate because we weren't exactly a very extroverted bunch. Like, I'm not an extrovert, he wasn't an extrovert. We were both just sort of silent a lot of the time. And even though I'm an introvert, I like people talking to me, and so that was a little difficult. But he was a good guy. I really think that he was a very good missionary. There's some interesting cuisine in England, like some things that you wouldn't really expect. For one thing, probably the strangest thing I tried was called black pudding. And what pudding means in England is very different from in America. Pudding in England means dessert. And this wasn't even a dessert, but that's what pudding means in England. So black pudding was made of pork fat, oatmeal, and imitation pig's blood. It used to be made with real pig's blood, but nowadays it's just used, they use just like salty red water or something. Anyway, I tried that, and that was interesting. There was an African member in one of my wards, and he just loved fufu. And for those of you who don't know what fufu is, it's corn that's mashed up until it's very, very finely grained, and then they add water to it, so it sort of looks like mashed potatoes. It's a little bit harder and sticks together more. And so I had fufu, and fufu was divine. I must tell you that fufu is a really good food. It's really expensive in the United States, but it's really, really good. And he had it with these like little sauces from his native country, and the sauces were, they were so good. Something else that was a little interesting that I tried is called pickled onions. And so they were like about this big, and you just pop a whole one in your mouth, chew it and swallow it, you know. And they were very sour, but I sort of liked them, even though they were repulsive to other American missionaries. And there was just a lot of different kinds of, the way we eat here is different than the way they eat in England. Like, for example, here the dish is, we usually eat around the grain. The grain is usually what's the head of the meal, or at least that's what it is in my home. But in England, they have, the meat is the main thing, the thing you're looking at most of the time. And so also they ate a lot more vegetables than we do here. And there's a good reason for that. They tasted amazing. Like, if I could get vegetables that tasted as good as they did in England here, I would totally eat like vegetables all day. But they just don't taste as good here, probably because they're not fresh or they're a different variety. But either way, British produce was just amazing. It was also inexpensive. I was just so surprised at how inexpensive and just lovely their food was.